Catherine, the Princess of Wales, celebrated her 42nd birthday today. And in honor of her today for Tiara Tuesday, we are going to look at the 4 tiaras Princess Catherine has worn, because tiaras are fun. And I think Catherine has some particularly great looks associated with her tiara. So without further ado, let's go into it. But if you haven't subscribed to Royal Fashion News yet, feel free to hit that subscribe button. I have Tiara Tuesdays. I'll start talking about a lot of royal fashion again. So if you're interested in royal fashion and the royal ladies, feel free to hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you back. And as we discuss the tiaras in this video, I just want you to pay very close attention, because there's actually a theme with a lot of tiaras Catherine has worn, 3 out of the 4 of them. And I think this gives us a good indicator of what may be her next tiara, or what I'm just really hoping will be her next tiara. So first one we're going to talk about is the Cartier Halo Tiara. And of course, this is the one she wore on her wedding day. So just a little bit of a history. It was purchased by George VI for his wife Elizabeth. So that is Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in 1936. She wore it for the first time on November 4th, but then it wasn't officially purchased until November 18th, 1936. And she wore it apparently to a gala. And we didn't really see her wear this one too often, because pretty soon after that she became queen. And so she gave this tiara to Elizabeth for her 18th birthday in 1944. As you may remember or recall, that is at the height of World War II. So obviously they didn't commission a new tiara. That would have seemed wasteful. So they did give her one that the queen already had. But Elizabeth didn't really get a chance to wear it, because after the war, there was the austerity measures. People weren't wearing tiaras quite as much. And so it took it a while for tiaras to come back in vogue, as they say. And by that time, she had married and was on her way to becoming queen. So we've never actually seen her wear this in public. But she did loan it to her younger sister, Margaret, who wore this tiara quite frequently, including to the inauguration of Queen Juliana of the Netherlands in 1948. And to her sister's coronation in 1953. You can sort of piece it out here around the coronet. And just to give you an idea of what this tiara is made up of, it has 739 brilliant cut diamonds, 149 baton diamonds, and it's set in platinum with 16 graduated rolls. And there is also a large brilliant diamond at the center. So I did pick out this close-up shot from the royal collection, because I did think, I was like, oh, I can see a little bit more details of the tiara here. And like I said, Margaret wore this one quite frequently before her marriage. And then it was passed on to Princess Anne. Anne wore it for the first time at the state opening of Parliament in 1967, and then later in New Zealand in 1970. And so this tiara, after Anne had worn it, she had graduated to other larger tiaras and went back in the vault until we saw it on Princess Catherine. I believe I remember at the time, because what I was really interested in around the time of Catherine and William's wedding was what tiara she would wear. And to be quite honest, I don't think this one was one of my choices, or even one I was that familiar with. It had just been so long since we had seen this particular one. I was really hoping for the Strathmore Rose, which we will get to in a little bit. But this was the one she chose, and she also designed her earrings after the tiara. So you get the little bit of that scroll motif. And so apparently, according to the royal collection, this tiara does have a red leather box from Gerard that it generally does sit in. And we haven't seen it on Catherine since, because it's been part of a tour with Cartier, because Cartier made this tiara and it was part of the halo style that was very popular at the time. And it's meant to be worn at a steep angle on the head. And I do have to say, it is an absolutely gorgeous tiara. Not one of my favorites, but I think it was still a good starter one for Catherine. I was still, the Strathmore Rose for a wedding, I think, is still probably one of my favorite tiara ideas. But Catherine, I think, knocked it out of the park with the Cartier Halo. And next tiara appearance we had from Catherine, which was in 2013, was the Lotus Flower Tiara. So this was one that was actually originally given as a necklace to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in 1923 at the event of her wedding, and then she redesigned it and made it into the Lotus Flower Tiara. It has meander and festoon designs in the necklace, which sort of transferred over to the tiara, and it was something given to her by her husband, the then Duke of York, and it was from Gerard. And it can also be worn across the forehead, which was in style at the time. And this tiara was worn a little bit by the Queen Mother, and then it went back into the vault for a while before it started being worn by Princess Margaret, who received the tiara from her mother in 1959. It was later worn by Serena Stanhope, who married the Viscount Linney, who was the son of Princess Margaret at the time. They have now since divorced, so she wore this one at her wedding, but since then it had not been seen until Catherine wore it in 2013. And there were some concerns at this particular tiara, because Princess Margaret had died and they had to sell off a good chunk of her estate, that this tiara was part of it. Apparently it went back to the main line of the family. And so I'm not a super big fan of this tiara. Even on Catherine, it's not my favorite, but it isn't bad either. I have a whole video though on the Lotus Flower tiara, so if you guys are interested in that, feel free to click the link. And so next we have, most famously, obviously, the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara, which is often called by many the Cambridge Lover's Knot. But it is not the Cambridge Lover's Knot, it is a copy of the Cambridge Lover's Knot. The Cambridge Lover's Knot has additional pearl spikes on top, which the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot does not. It originally did, but they took those off, and I think that's perfectly fine. And when it comes to the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot, I've covered it a couple of times, so we won't go into super big details. I have a whole video about it that I'll link up here. It was made in 1913, also by Gerard. It used pearls from the original Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, which also had pearl spikes on top. And it was worn by Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, Princess Diana, and Catherine. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, is the only queen or future queen that we have not spotted in this tiara. One of Catherine's latest tiara appearances had my heart singing, because Catherine did finally wear the Strathmore Rose tiara, which hadn't been seen in about 100 years. Again, I have a whole video on this particular tiara. It was made probably in the late 19th century, and it was purchased by the Earl and Countess of Strathmore for their daughter Elizabeth, who became Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, Elizabeth Bowles-Lyon, for her wedding in 1923. So another 1923 connection. And it hasn't been seen since at least the 1930s, if not the late 1920s. And obviously when Catherine wore this particular tiara, it would have been the 100th wedding anniversary of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. So it was a wonderful nod by Catherine to wear it. We had been told, or there had been a lot of rumors that was too delicate, which I can understand. There's not a lot of as much structure to it as there is to some tiaras, but apparently it had been remade, reforged into a great frame, and it looked fabulous on Catherine. So now that we've discussed all the tiaras Catherine has worn, what one theme do we have throughout each of these tiaras? Well, I would say the big one, if you caught on to it, is that all three of these tiaras originally belonged to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and were given to her around the time of her wedding or before the ascension of her husband, King George VI. So apparently, this is according to the Royal Watcher, she only really had 4 tiaras to use as the Duchess of York. She had the Strathmore Rose, the Lotus Flower, the Cartier Halo, and the Persian Turquoise tiara. So I'm a fan of the Persian turquoise. I actually like turquoise and tiaras in general. I think it actually looks really cool. And so I am personally a fan of the idea of Catherine obviously has continued the legacy of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, by wearing some of her probably most precious tiaras. So I'm really hoping that someday soon we will see Catherine once again wear the Persian turquoise tiara, which had been lent to Princess Margaret and many believe probably went back to the royal vaults, much like the Lotus Flower. So fingers crossed that we may see that on Catherine. I think that would be absolutely fabulous. I think it would look great with her brunette hair. So I am really hoping we see the Persian turquoise tiara taken out of the vault here really soon. But anyways, guys, we just want to wish Catherine a very happy 42nd birthday. And thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
We don't count the carats. We count the centuries.